So in 2009, I left private practice for a stable hospital job and had benefits, good salary for the area I live in, and I wasn't having to chase down payments or market myself. It seemed like a really, really stable choice. So, why did I stay for 5.5 years? And then why did I run for my life in fall or summer or fall of 2024 back to the instability of private practice? Well, first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like working for having a full-time W-2 job after having been in various iterations of private practice since 2012. So that was full-time, part-time, and I would sometimes have a contract job or a part-time hospital job. But, I'd been in private practice for a while. So what happened was I was getting close to 40, or maybe I was 40. What year was this? No, I was 40 something, 42. I don't know. And something funny happens when you get into your 40s, which is you start to think about your death. It's no longer an abstract concept and a thing that happens to other people or like really old people. You start to really feel your age, and it starts to become something like, oh shit, I'm gonna die one day, and I don't have enough retirement. So that was a big reason. I was at a place with my private practice at the time. I was only taking one insurance, and that was the majority of my payer source. And then I had a few self-pay clients. But I realized I wasn't putting enough into retirement, and I just felt, I don't know, I was just at a place in my life where I thought I needed more stability. So I applied to some jobs, and then I applied to this one job, this very large hospital system in my area, and got the job, and I was pretty excited. I knew somebody who was in that department, so he kind of gave me the rundown of what to expect. And honestly, at the time, this should have scared me, but it didn't. So I was told that we were expected to see 8 patients a day. I say patients. In private practice, I refer to them as clients, but when you're in a hospital system, everybody's a patient, so we'll just say patients. So we were scheduled for 8 a day, which may not sound like a lot if you are a prescriber who is seeing 15 people a day for 15-minute appointments. But for a therapist, 8 is too much. But I told myself, well, there'll be 45-minute appointments and they won't always show up, all 8. So if I see an average of 6 people for 45 minutes, I can do that. That's not going to be bad. And I really thought that. So at the time, we were brought in as what's called an APP, which is an advanced practice provider. So they treated LCSWs in behavioral health as if we were kind of mid-level, what they refer to like nurse practitioners or some other allied health folks and physician assistants. Anyway, so we had a few extra perks and we were treated with a little bit more respect. So that was cool. I felt like I was being, treated pretty well. Anyway, long story short, I burned out. COVID happened as well. So I started there in early February of 2019. So then COVID happens about a year later, and everybody was freaking out. The world was freaking out. And so all of a sudden, we were all working from home doing telehealth, and so they implemented a policy. The working from home part was cool because I was actually one of the few providers that was starting to do some telehealth, and so that was cool. I got used to that. It was just that in order to keep our jobs and not let us go during COVID, we had to do what was called mitigation. And mitigation was they extended the number of patients we were expected to see every day so we could keep our jobs. So they were doing us a favor, apparently, by requiring us to see more patients, and we got to keep our jobs. I don't know how to convey to you mentally what it does to you when the world is on fire, there's a plague, everybody's dying. We still didn't have a lot of information about what it was. There was no vaccine yet. The thought of having to see 9 people in one day, one more than 8, but it may as well have been 12, because it was so daunting and emotionally draining. So it was awful. It was awful. But we got to keep our jobs. And we did get, oddly enough, a pretty high percentage of a raise across the board around that time. I'm not sure why, because it's not like we got any raises to speak of thereafter. I digress. Anyway, that was exhausting and it burned me out. One of the things about one of the trade-offs when you go and work with a hospital or agency or organization is that you don't have control over the clients that you see. And I'm a great therapist. I'm not a great therapist for everybody, though. And even though we were allowed to set some parameters as far as our preferred niche or specialization clients that we like to work with, we still got a lot of folks that were not really in our wheelhouse, so to speak. That is extremely difficult as a therapist, to work with clients who you're not doing your best work with. And it's not like we didn't refer out if it was out of our scope. We did do that. But I'm not the best therapist for, a severely mentally ill, borderline personality man in his 60s. I am not the best therapist for someone who is not in a space where they are ready to do actual therapy, where it's more of like a vent session. And a lot of the sessions ended up being like that. And while absolutely people needed access to care and they needed support, for me that was not a good fit. It was very draining on me. So I felt like I was failing all the time. I felt like I was failing myself. I was exhausted. I was failing my clients because I wasn't bringing my A game. And, even after COVID kind of calmed down and we went back to our normal expectation of seeing 8 people a day, it was too much. So I can talk more about this later because there's lots more details and stories about this. But anyway, I reached a point where actually for a couple of years before I left, I thought about going back to graduate school. I thought about changing careers. I was like, I can't do this. And then I thought, I need to be in private practice again. Like, why am I not doing that? I've done it before. I can do it again. So I made a decision to get started back in private practice. And I made it happen. And it was a lot of work, setting up my website, getting all my ducks in a row, business licenses, because I was going to be working from home part-time and then renting office space in 2 different parishes. In Louisiana, we have parishes, not counties. So there was a lot to do, but I got back in it, and thank God it saved my life. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't wrestled with burnout since getting back into private practice, because I have, but that's kind of related to being autistic and having ADHD, come to find out. Anyway, if you are a therapist and you feel like your only option is to work for an agency, a big hospital organization, some corporation, that you can't find stability in private practice, I would argue that you absolutely can. You're going to have to tolerate some level of risk, but it is so worth it. It is so worth it. I am so glad that almost 2 years ago I decided to go back into private practice. So glad.